Welcome back to School Quiz students. I'm your biology teacher Swathi, and in today's video we are going to discuss how the transmission of diseases can be prevented. But before knowing that how the transmission of diseases can be prevented, we should know that what are the ways in which the transmission has been caused, or what are the agents or the sources by which this transmission is basically caused. Okay, so one of the so basically five apps of transmissions are there from various sources in which the diseases can be transmitted. So first of all, it is through the fluids. So fluid, suppose basically if we are drinking water, so through that water it can be transmitted. Suppose if we are drinking water which is not clean, or which is like uh, taken from some sources which has not been purified, or which is not good for our health. Next can be finger. If suppose if we are touching something, suppose a table is there and we are touching that table with our hands, so, and those dust particle come to our hand, and directly without washing our hand, if we will take that food inside our mouth, that can also be a possible cause of the transmission of diseases can be there. Suppose after using washroom, if we are not properly cleaning our hands, not properly cleaning our nails, so that can also be a source of transmission of the diseases. Second can be a fly. For many of the diseases, house flies or the domestic flies basically act as the vectors. Also, they like play a role in carrying that disease from one place to another. Suppose we have prepared a food and we have kept that food open for many hours, and like flies are just breeding on that food, and we know that flies are a kind of domestic like species which will also sit on, suppose some dung is there or some dead and decaying material is there. They don't know the distinguish between like this thing is good or this thing is bad, so ultimately they will sit on those things, and because of that contamination can be caused. And if like without washing or without doing those things, suppose if we have those foods, so that all that contamination will go directly into our stomach. Or suppose if like has been uncovered and we just consume that food directly, so that can be a way. Next can be filled. So in filled, suppose if properly treated water has not been supplied to the felt, suppose because in many cities nowadays the sewage treatment plants are very much in the application, in which we can see that like just to save the water and conserve the water, many sewage treatment plants are there, so that that water can be used for like irrigation purposes and for watering of the plant, so that we don't have to like use pure water for that. But many times what happens now, if there is some technical glitch or some issue is there in those instruments, and because of that, if that instrument is not working properly at that moment, so that contamination will come to plants, and from plants we will get those diseases in that way. Or many times what happens is like in field, like cows are there, other animals are there, their dung is there, so flies are sitting there, other earthworms are there, other insects are there, so that proper cleanliness is also necessary. And next is flood. We know that flood is a kind of natural calamity in which is caused because of excessive rain. So if there is excessive rain, we know that like water is just stagnated at some places in puddles, drainage systems are overflowing, and that drainage system basically becomes a breeding ground for insects and mosquitoes. And because of which like because of that stagnant water, the flies and mosquitoes breed there, and we just get that diseases, because at that time they are acting as vectors for those diseases. Like suppose we can say dengue is there, other sources are there, so in that way it can be transmitted, because we know that like in this environment there are many sources by which we can get transmission. Suppose if we come in contact with soil, water or air, many ways can be there. Okay, now before knowing that how we can protect all these things and how we can prevent ourselves from diseases, we should know what actually the hygiene is and what actually the sanitation is. So hygiene basically is a kind of methodology, you can say, or the process of being self-aware of the cleanliness, or like we should maintain the cleanliness of our body and surroundings. Like we should take bath daily, we should brush our teeth twice a day, we should wear neat and clean clothes, we should always we should daily do the cleaning and dusting of our house. After preparing the food also, we should cover that food properly, so that the chances of contamination are reduced. So these are something which at our levels we can do. Many times we just like are so careless and we don't pay heed to those things. Suppose nowadays, like in this COVID scenario also, we have seen that the government is advising us to wear mask and other things, but we are taking it carelessly. So that is also a way in which the contamination can be stopped. Because if you know that if you have covered your face like this, so if you will sneeze or if you will cough, so those air droplets which are there, they will not come in contact with another person. Or suppose if a person is there in front of you who is contaminated with COVID, you don't know by looking at that person, and if that person is sneezing in front of you, you have not covered your face with this mask in that way, and that person has not. So at that time the chances of getting that contamination increases. So maintaining proper hygiene, every time washing the vegetables and everything is whenever we bring it from market, that is very very necessary, kids. Okay. So and after that comes the sanitation, in which comes that whenever we are using water at our house, whether it's for like washing our clothes or in washrooms for bathing and other things, so how that water has been disposed, or like how that channel has been done, like whether the drainage system is proper, the sewage system is proper or not, like it should be properly covered, stagnant water should not be there. Okay. So now first of all we will see how the transmission by fluids can be prevented. So first of all we should try to protect water sources. So water sources should be protected. That means that we should always try to uh, cover up the water, whatever it is. Like suppose if we are having drinking water in a earthen pot, so that should be covered with a plate in that way. Or if we talk about river and other sources, in that way also we should firstly treat that water before consuming that water. Next comes treatment and store water safely. So if we can treat and store water safely, that means if there is some chlorine content is there, so chlorine can be added to the water so that other contamination can be removed from the water. Or we can also use other sources in which the water can be um, purified. Or like we can also use aqua filter at home, or we can have other sources in which the water can be properly purified. And if we talk about storage, so many times we have seen that people also prefer rainwater harvesting. So in that case we should try to have filters there, so that impurities and dust particles are just purified out of that surface, and only clean water is there for our consumptions. Okay. Second, if we talk about as finger, so we know that like whenever we are consuming our food, or if we are preparing food, we should always make sure that we are properly cleaning our hands with detergent or some uh, uh, good disinfectant, so that that is not passed on to our food. Next, if we talk about sanitation, we should wash our hands after using washroom, or after defecation process we should always try to clean our hands properly. Next come flies. So for the flies, as I have told you that we should always after preparing the food we should always try to cover up that food, because if we will not cover that food, so that contamination will ultimately come in our mouth only, and like it will ultimately affect our digestive system, and then other systems and processes will be hampered. Next is control flies. So we know that when many times if the number of flies increases in our house, we just try to use disinfectant, or we just try to clean the floor by mixing some phenyl in the water and just just swapping the floor with that properly so that the number of flies in our homes can be